Alexander Ranaldson MacDonell, Clan Chief of Glengarry. The strange tale of the fallen fortunes of the Glengarry MacDonells and the 17th clan chief of that name, who ended his days alone in Dunedin.
One of the great tragedies of modern Scottish history, and the primary driver of the diaspora of Scots to every corner of the globe, is the 18th and 19th century phenomenon known as the Highland clearances. Now, this was a byproduct of the collapse of the old clan-based way of life in the Highlands, which saw clan chieftains transformed into commercial landlords who were prepared to push loyal clansmen off their traditional lands in the pursuit of higher rents from outsiders, especially sheep farmers. Many clansfolk reacted by emigrating. The Highland clearances are generally dated as beginning in 1785, when the first large-scale evictions of people from their homes began, with MacDonell clansmen cleared from their lands at Noart by the 14th chief of Glengarry. Now, he was pursuing an extravagant, increasingly anglicised sort of gentry lifestyle, and needed more funds which he could get by renting their lands to sheep farmers instead. This generally happened a generation or two before the Otago settlement got underway, but it's still relevant to our immigration story because many of those families from the lowlands who came to Otago were relatively recent arrivals there from the Highlands. They were the children and grandchildren, if you like, of those who'd been cleared. This grave, however, is directly connected to the Highland clearances, but from the other side. It's for one of the clan chieftains whose predecessor had betrayed his people by clearing them from their ancestral lands. Here lies Alexander Ranaldson MacDonell, the 17th chief of Glengarry, who died in Dunedin from rheumatic fever at the age of 28 in June 1862. He was the grandson of one of the most notorious clearing chiefs of all, his namesake, Alexander Ranaldson MacDonell, the 15th chief of Glengarry. Under his watch, most of the Glengarry MacDonells were cleared from their traditional lands here in Scotland and immigrated to Canada, many of them eventually settling in Glengarry County in Ontario. Meanwhile, their clan chieftain pursued an opulent lifestyle while parading about in traditional Highland garb and attended by a retinue of clansmen, even while he was destroying that relationship of mutual obligation on which clan life was based. The lavishness of Glengarry's lifestyle, however, quickly outrun the amount of income he could generate from his vast land holdings from Glengarry to Noart, even while earning the higher rentals he could get by letting it to sheep farmers from the south. By the time he died in 1828, the Glengarry estate was burdened with huge levels of debt.
In 1840, his only son and heir, Aeneas MacDonell, the 16th chief, sold the Glengarry part of his estate for the huge sum of £91,000 and attempted to start a new life in Australia as a sheep farmer, accompanied by a number of MacDonell clansmen intending to recreate his chieftainship in a new colonial setting. This project fizzled after a couple of years, and Aeneas returned to Scotland in 1842. He died at Invergary in 1852, leaving his son and heir Alexander Ranaldson with a much reduced land base and further debts. In 1857, the 17th chief put Noart, the last of the MacDonell holdings, up for auction. The Noart estate then passed to an iron foundry magnate from Glasgow, James Beard, for £90,200. Beard had been born as the younger son of a tenant farmer in Lanarkshire and had built a fabulous fortune from his family's ironworks. He bought Noart as a quiet country retreat, most of the land let as sheep runs, other parts set aside for sporting pursuits like fishing and deer hunting. Few MacDonell clansmen remained. Noart was on-sold in 1860 to director of the Canadian Hudson Bay Company. Later owners included cigarette manufacturer Sir Frederick Willis and the inventor of the sewing machine, Sir Mortimer Singer. During World War II, Inverie House, the old MacDonell mansion, became the secret training base for the Special Operations Executive, Britain's force for clandestine warfare in Europe. Meanwhile, in 1857, Alexander Ranaldson MacDonell headed to New Zealand, setting up as a run holder in Nelson and Canterbury. By 1862, when he made a will in Edinburgh, his estate was worth no more than £9,000. Glengarry's time in New Zealand left a very light impression on the historical record. He arrived with one of his sisters on the Oriental at Lyttelton in September 1857. One account suggests his younger brother Charles was also a partner in the New Zealand enterprise. But the brothers did not get on, both spending much of their time on women and wine to the detriment of their business interests and complicating the role of their managers at Culloden Station in North Canterbury.
Then in late 1861, he relocated to Dunedin. Exactly where and for what purpose we don't know. But he died ill and alone, possibly at the Provincial Hotel in Stafford Street on the 2nd of June 1862. There was a death notice in the Otago Daily Times that recorded he was on his way to Canterbury. And so he was buried in Dunedin, far, far from the ancestral mausoleum of the Glengarry chieftains here in Kilfinnan.
Charles MacDonell inherited the title, becoming the 18th chief of Glengarry. He spent the next few years in Canterbury, but made a visit to Dunedin in November 1862, perhaps to organise a simple cross that was originally erected on his brother's grave here. He died himself from illness in 1868 at sea, en route from Lyttelton to London, and the title then passed to a nephew.
For over 30 years, Glengarry's grave was untended and pretty much forgotten about. Then in 1896, a campaign was mounted to raise subscriptions from MacDonalds and other Highlanders across the province to erect something more fitting to mark the dead clan chieftain's grave. And so a massive Celtic cross was erected here with the clan crest and motto marked out in stone, and on the other side an inscription that showed that the monument was as much a lament for a lost Highland culture as it was for MacDonell himself.
Its English translation read,
"Erected by the Scottish Gaels of Dunedin and their friends throughout Otago, as a national memorial to the great chief who has departed, and for the days that are gone. 1897, shoulder to shoulder."
Eventually the monument fell into a ruinous state and it was replaced by this new, somewhat humbler version in the 1990s. And once again, it was Clan Donald, supported by overseas clan organisations, that funded the work. Some of the shards of the original stone, the part with the clan crest, a raven and a rock, are on display here at Toitu. They're an amazing reminder of one of the saddest epochs in Scottish history, and the strange combination of events that saw a Highland chief, his family well fallen from grace, end his days alone here in Gold Rush Dunedin.